I was great once. Feared. Yes.
What we're focusing on today is the one of the weapons that Dracula has in the game, which is the Void Sword. This is a vampiric weapon that is able to absorb life points from enemies. So players use it strategically in battle. So basically you hit an enemy, you get life back. So you can swap out between the Blood Whip and the Void Sword during combat. The Blood Whip deals damage at range. You can also use it at direct attacks, use it for crowd control, that kind of thing, but then you need to get in close with the Void Sword in order to recoup life. So we're showing that, and we're also showing the focus system. In the original Lords of Shadow game we had the focus system, which meant you had to play well, so players would hit enemies and then fill out the focus system bar, and when the focus system bar was filled up, enemies would drop orbs. But in the case of Lords of Shadow 2 they actually dropped blood, and blood is what you use to power Dracula's weapons, so that's how you can use the Void Sword, is by hitting enemies, building up focus, and then using the blood that you acquire to keep your Void Sword going, because otherwise you won't be able to use it. One of the things that people really liked about the first game was the combat system, and so we wanted to keep the focus system in the game. What we've done this time is we've added new weaponry, because we didn't have weaponry in the previous game. We had light and shadow magic, and they basically just supported the Blood Whip, supported the combat cross from the first game. But in this game, the other weapons are unique weapons in themselves. They've got their own combos, they've got their own systems that they use. So although the focus and the way that you use your weapons is similar to Lords of Shadow, there's much more depth to it because you've got these new abilities. And then what we've also done is we've added a thing called Mastery. So the more that you use specific combos for that specific weapon, the more you're able to funnel what we call Mastery into that weapon and improve that weapon and make that weapon more powerful and better at what it does. So that's a new thing that we didn't have in the previous game. And that's really sort of refined the combat in terms of the strategic side of it. The other thing that we've done, obviously, with Dracula, he bites enemies, he uses blood, so you're able to bite enemies to recoup some health. We've used a dodge feature to speed up combat, so you can knock enemies over, you can move around enemies, and then later on in the game, when you get the mist ability, you can be able to go through enemies during combat as well. So it really gives the player a lot more options in terms of what they can do when they're fighting enemies. We had a story to tell. We wanted to tell Dracula's story. We had the story arc already mapped out when we did the first game, and we think it's important that if you've got something to say it, and then once you're done, then move on. We want to move on and do new things, new projects, and we want to leave a legacy behind, to give Dracula's point of view, if you like, to give Dracula's story, and that's what we always set out to do. So we don't want to sort of prolong that. And we think that that's good. That players, when they see the Lords of Shadow trilogy as a whole, it all makes sense. It's consistent. It's a cohesive whole. There is a lot in this game, so there's a lot of content, there's a big story elements, there's a lot of things that you can do. Obviously, we've revealed very little actually. The trailer itself, didn't really show that much, and I think we've got a message to get across, and it's going to take a long time, I think, to get people to understand what this game is going to be about, because it's a bigger evolution from the previous game than people are expecting, I think. When the first game came out, everyone was kind of, it was successful, everyone was thinking, no, they're just going to knock out another sequel. But we've really, ripped up the rulebook, rebuilt our graphic engine right from the start, and we've really started again, and this is quite a big difference to the previous Lords of Shadow game in many respects. Although on the surface now that what we're showing you looks very similar, I think as we get further and closer to release, you'll see that the game is actually quite different.
A mere shadow of your former self.
Shadow, am I?
No, there won't be anyone else playable. I mean, this is a game that focuses on Dracula, so the characters that you've seen, some of them you'll recognise from Lords of Shadow 1, some of them you'll recognise from Mirror Fate. Alucard is definitely in the game, but he plays he's not a major role. He does play a role, obviously, because it's the son of Dracula, but it's not a major role. This is really a game focused on Dracula, and in fact, the Lords of Shadow series, is all about Dracula. And that's the story that we wanted to tell. So yeah, you're going to see other characters, both old and new, and I think there's going to be some really big twists and turns, because I think that's what people are expecting from us after the end of the previous game, and we want to give players a really sort of satisfying conclusion to the story when it comes out.
It is time to get out of this wretched tomb you have made for yourself. Stop skulking in the shadows.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big criticisms we got of the previous game, was that there wasn't enough exploration or platforming was separate to combat. And this time what we've tried to do is incorporate combat and platforming together. If you remember at the E3 demo, when you're climbing up the Titan, you're also in combat. There's several areas of combat. There's enemies attacking you while you're doing it. We want to make it a little bit more exciting for players. So that's really important. That's something we wanted to do for Lords of Shadow 2. The other thing we wanted to do is beef up the exploration aspect of the game. We felt that with a fixed camera that it wasn't really possible to really explore the world, and people really like the art direction and the art design that we'd gone for. So this time we've given them the free camera so that they can explore, and we've given them an open world environment. So rather than follow a linear path, players have more options to explore. It's a world that grows organically from the beginning. So you start off very linear, and then gradually the world grows and grows and grows, and it gives you lots of options, and there's loads of secrets to find. And I think that's important for a Castlevania game. I wouldn't really compare it to Symphony of the Night because that's more of a sort of a 2D game, but I suppose the idea of being able to go back or finding things to allow you to progress, that is definitely in Lords of Shadow 2. So for example, the mist ability is something that you don't have at the beginning of the game, and as you play through the game you see certain areas that are cordoned off with bars or gratings and that kind of stuff. And when you get the mist ability, you sort of realise to yourself, actually that previous area I was gone, or that area a few hours ago, I might be able to go through there, might be something new there. And so we give players more things to do, more things to find, more enemies, new story elements, that kind of stuff. So the game kind of opens out, and it's at one, after about 2 or 3 hours you start to realise, oh, I don't need to follow the path, I don't need to do my main mission, I don't need to follow the story if I don't want to. I can go back, I can explore, I can find stuff. And there's lots of things for players to do like that, and I think that's something that's very similar to what Symphony of the Night did, but in a 2D plane. We sort of see this as a torch that we've been given, and then it's our turn to pass the torch on to someone else. Whatever that team does, I'll be excited to see. I think a series like Castlevania is survived 26, 27 years because it's evolved and it's changed for the new audiences all the time. If you think about all the different types of Castlevania games we've had the N64 games, which were the first 3D iterations. We've had, obviously Symphony of the Night and the Metroidvania style games, the classic games. We've even had a fighting game, and now we're doing a hack and slash style game. I think it's a series that's evolved, and that's what's kept it fresh. What happens next? Who knows? Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 is coming out on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PC this winter.